The crash. The fireball lit up the Nevada sky like a second sun. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking coffee in her observatory when the alerts started screaming. Satellites had detected something massive entering Earth's atmosphere, something that wasn't slowing down like it should. "Please don't be an asteroid," she muttered, pulling up the tracking data. It wasn't an asteroid. The object was decelerating, but erratically, like a wounded bird trying to land. It carved a burning trench across 3 states before slamming into the Nevada desert with enough force to register as a 4.2 magnitude earthquake. Sarah was on the first helicopter to the site. What she saw took her breath away. The ship was enormous, nearly 3 football fields long, and looked like someone had welded a skyscraper to a submarine and launched it into space. Its hull was scorched black, covered in strange symbols that seemed to shimmer even in the harsh desert sun. Pieces of it had broken off during the crash, scattered across the sand like shrapnel. But the most striking thing? It was still humming. Deep inside the wreckage, something was still alive. "My God," Sarah whispered. The military arrived within hours. Tents went up, fences went up. Within 3 days, the crash site had become the most classified location on Earth. Scientists, engineers, and linguists from every nation descended on the desert. They called it First Contact. They were half right. It took 2 weeks to find a way inside. The ship's hull was made of something that laughed at their cutting torches. Diamond-tipped drills barely scratched it. Explosives did nothing but make noise. Finally, a young engineer named Marcus Webb noticed something. "The damage," he said, pointing to a massive crack in the hull. "The ship did our job for us." They widened the crack with hydraulic jacks and slipped inside. The interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, lit by faint bioluminescent panels that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was breathable, barely, and smelled like ozone and something Sarah couldn't identify. Burnt plastic? Alien sweat? They found the bodies on day 3, 4 of them, slumped over consoles in what looked like the bridge. They were vaguely humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but their skin was a mottled gray-blue and their faces were too angular, too alien to be comfortable. "They didn't die in the crash," the medical examiner said. "Best guess, starvation, dehydration, they were dead before they hit Atmo." Sarah stared at the corpses. So this was already a ghost ship. Looks like it. Marcus was less interested in the dead aliens and more interested in their consoles. He'd been poking at the holographic displays for hours, trying to make sense of the symbols. "Sarah, come look at this." She joined him at the main console. The display showed a rotating schematic of the ship, with entire sections marked in angry red. "I think this is a damage report," Marcus said. "And I think it's been screaming about critical failures for a long time." Sarah frowned. "How long?" Marcus tapped a symbol. The display flickered, then showed a timestamp, or what looked like one. "If I'm reading this right?" He looked at her. "Years, maybe decades. This thing's been limping through space on life support and it finally gave out." "So they came here to crash?" "No." Marcus pointed to another display. "They came here because Earth was the closest planet with an atmosphere. They were trying to save themselves." Sarah looked at the dead aliens again. "They didn't make it." "No," Marcus agreed, "but their ship did." The discovery that changed everything came 3 months later. They'd been mapping the ship's systems, trying to understand its structure. It was slow work. The ship was enormous, and every room revealed new mysteries. Storage bays filled with containers they couldn't open, medical bays with equipment they didn't understand. And at the very center of the ship, behind a door that took them 2 weeks to open, the engine room. "Holy hell," Marcus breathed. The engine, if that's what it was, filled a space the size of an aircraft hangar. It looked like a massive sphere of crystalline metal, suspended in a web of glowing conduits. Arcs of blue energy danced across its surface, even now, even dormant. Sarah approached it slowly, her instruments going haywire. "The energy readings are off the charts. This thing is still active." "More than active," Marcus said. He was staring at a nearby console. "It's trying to repair itself." "What?" He pointed to the display. Look, the ship's AI, or whatever passes for one, has been running diagnostics non-stop since the crash. It's rerouting power, bypassing damaged systems, trying to bring the engine back online. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Why? Marcus met her eyes. Because it thinks it can still fly. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the ship, about the aliens who died trying to save it, about the engine that refused to quit. Around 3 a.m., she gave up and went back to the crash site. The ship hummed in the darkness, lit by floodlights and the glow of its own strange biology. Sarah walked through the corridors alone, her footsteps echoing. She found herself back at the bridge. The dead aliens had been removed for study, but their consoles were still active. Sarah sat in what she guessed was the captain's chair and stared at the displays. On impulse, she touched one. The console flared to life. Symbols scrolled across the screen, too fast to read but somehow familiar. And then, in a voice that sounded like grinding metal and distant thunder, the ship spoke. Identify. Sarah nearly fell out of the chair. I'm human, from Earth, this planet. Silence. Then, insufficient designation. Query. Salvage crew? Sarah's heart pounded. No, we're studying you, trying to understand. Negative. Study parameters locked. Vessel status. Decommissioned, awaiting reclamation. Decommissioned. Sarah leaned forward. You mean, you were abandoned? Another pause, longer this time. Affirmative. Prototype vessel, Icarus 7, deemed failure by Zathari Collective. Catastrophic design flaws. Crew casualties 4. Vessel declared total loss. Sarah felt something twist in her chest. So they just left you to die? Protocol followed. Vessel deemed irreparable. But you're still working, Sarah said. You brought yourself here. You survived. Survival protocols engaged. Outcome irrelevant. Vessel remains non-functional. Sarah stared at the screen, at the ship that had dragged itself across the stars, only to be told it wasn't good enough. She thought about humanity, about every time they'd been told something was impossible. Every time they'd been underestimated. Listen to me, she said. My people. We're good at fixing broken things. What if we could help? Query. Species technological level? Pre-FTL, Sarah admitted, but we're fast learners. The ship actually laughed, a horrible grinding sound. Negative. Species inadequate. Vessel complexity beyond primitive comprehension. Recommendation. Abandon salvage. Sarah smiled. You don't know humans very well. She stood and placed her hand on the console. Here's what's going to happen, she said. We're going to study every inch of you. We're going to learn how you work. And then, whether you believe we can or not, we're going to fix you. Probability of success. 0.03%. I've beaten worse odds. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. We're giving you a new name. Something better than Icarus 7. Query. Designation? Prometheus, Sarah said, after the guy who stole fire from the gods. The ship was silent for a long moment, then, quietly, acknowledged. Designation updated. Awaiting. Miracle. Sarah grinned. You're about to learn what humans do best. She walked out into the desert night, where Marcus was waiting by the fence. Talking to yourself? He asked. No, Sarah said. Talking to the ship. And Marcus, yeah? We're going to need a bigger team. Part 2. The blueprint 6 months after first contact with Prometheus. The Nevada facility had transformed into something between a research campus and a small city. They called it Site Olympus. 12,000 people now worked around the clock in shifts. Engineers, physicists, linguists, metallurgists, xenobiologists, and 100 other specialties humanity had invented just to understand what they'd found. The ship sat at the center of it all, a silent monument to alien ambition and failure. Sarah Chen stood in the main operations center, staring at a holographic display that made her head hurt. Explain it to me again, she said. but slower this time. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their lead physicist, sighed. She'd been trying to explain the ship's propulsion system for 3 hours. Okay, forget everything you know about physics. Not helping, Yuki? I'm serious. This thing doesn't move through space, it moves space around it. The quantum displacement drive creates a bubble of altered space-time. Inside the bubble, the ship doesn't experience inertia, friction, or relativistic effects. Sarah rubbed her temples. So it's like folding space? Not quite. More like convincing space that the ship is already where it wants to be. That's impossible. It's sitting in our backyard, Sarah. It's very possible. Yuki pulled up another schematic. The problem is the drive is incredibly unstable. The Zathari tried to make it too perfect. They wanted zero energy loss, perfect quantum coherence, flawless field symmetry, and that's bad because the universe isn't perfect. Reality is messy. Their drive couldn't handle the chaos, so it kept tearing itself apart. Yuki highlighted a section of the schematic. See these regulators? They failed during the Zathari's test flight. The resulting cascade killed the crew and fried half the ship's systems. Sarah studied the design. What if we didn't try to make it perfect? Yuki blinked. What? The Zathari wanted flawless. What if we settled for good enough? Add redundancy, manual overrides, safety margins. Make it messy on purpose. Yuki stared at her. That's actually not insane. High praise coming from you. I'll run simulations. But Sarah? Yuki's expression turned serious. Even if we solve the drive problem, we've got 100 other critical failures. Life support is barely functional. Navigation is offline. The hull has 17 major breaches. This isn't a repair job, it's a resurrection. Then, we'd better get started. Marcus Webb had claimed the ship's engineering bay as his personal kingdom. He stood now in front of a wall covered in paper, actual paper, because sometimes you needed to draw things out by hand to understand them. Schematics, calculations, and failed ideas covered every surface. Talk to me. Prometheus, he muttered, studying a particularly nasty problem. Query. Which failure do you wish to discuss today, Engineer Webb? I have 247 critical errors to choose from. Marcus had grown used to the AI's sarcasm. Over the months, Prometheus had evolved from hostile to merely condescending. Progress. The power distribution network. Your primary conduits are shot and the backup systems are barely holding on. I need to reroute power to essential systems without overloading what's left. Impossible. Power requirements exceed available capacity by 34%. Vessel requires Zathari replacement components, which we don't have. Precisely. Thank you for confirming futility of efforts. Marcus grinned. You know, for a dead ship, you sure complain a lot. I am not dead. I am critically impaired. Semantics. Marcus grabbed a marker and started sketching. What if we don't use your original power grid? What if we build a new one? Carrie, with what materials? Human technology is primitive. Primitive but abundant, and we're really good at jury-rigging solutions. He tapped his drawing. Look, we run new conduits through your maintenance tunnels. Copper at first, then we'll upgrade as we figure out your fancy alien materials. We add circuit breakers, fuses, manual cutoffs. We make it so if one section fails, it doesn't take down the whole grid. This violates 43 Zathari engineering protocols. Good. Those protocols got you killed. Marcus met the nearest camera. Trust me, Prometheus. Sometimes the best engineering isn't elegant, it's whatever keeps you alive. A long pause. Accessing human engineering databases. Analyzing concept of jury rigging. Fascinating. You frequently repair. Systems with components never intended for such. Purpose. Welcome to human innovation. It is inefficient. Inelegant, statistically improbable to succeed. Marcus smiled. And yet we made it to space using controlled explosions and basic chemistry. Never underestimate what humans can do with duct tape and spite. I do not understand duct tape. Oh, buddy, you're about to learn. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Morrison was a linguist who'd been studying the ship's language and data logs. Late one night, he burst into Sarah's office, wild-eyed and clutching a tablet. I found something. In the Zathari logs. Sarah, they knew it would fail. She looked up from her own work. What? The Zathari collective knew the Icarus 7 was flawed before they ever launched it. Look. He pulled up translated documents. This was a political project. Two factions within the collective were competing. One wanted incremental improvements to existing drive technology. The other wanted this revolutionary quantum drive. Let me guess, the revolutionaries won? Barely. And they rushed the project to prove their point. They ignored safety warnings, skipped critical tests, pushed the crew to launch before the ship was ready. James scrolled through more documents. The crew that died? They knew it was a suicide mission. They volunteered anyway because they believed in the dream. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. So the collective didn't just abandon the ship, they abandoned their own people. Worse. After the disaster, both factions were discredited. The ship was declared an embarrassment. They dumped it in deep space and scrubbed it from their records. As far as the Zathari are concerned, the Icarus 7 never existed. Sarah stood and walked to her window, which overlooked the flood-lit ship. They gave up on it, she said quietly. Gave up on their own crew's sacrifice. On their own dream. Yes. She turned back to James. Then we'll do what they couldn't. We'll make it mean something. 1 year after the crash, Sarah called an all-hands meeting. 12,000 people gathered in the main hangar. In person, via video link through translators in a dozen languages. The entire project together for the first time. Sarah stood on a platform in front of Prometheus. The ship loomed behind her, still broken but no longer dark. Lights glowed in its windows now. Human lights. I want to tell you about a crew, she began. 4 Zathari who knew they were flying a death trap. Who launched anyway because they believed in pushing boundaries. They died thinking they'd failed, thinking their sacrifice meant nothing. She paused, looking out at the crowd. I want to tell you about a ship, a machine declared worthless by its creators, abandoned in space. It crawled here on its last breath, still trying to survive, still hoping someone might care. Sarah placed her hand on Prometheus's hull. And I want to tell you about us. Humanity. We're not the smartest species. We're not the most advanced. But we have one thing the Zathari didn't. We don't give up on things just because they're broken. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Prometheus told me we had a 0.03% chance of success. You know what? I think those odds are generous. We're trying to fix alien technology we barely understand, using materials that weren't designed for it, following instincts instead of instructions. She smiled. And it's working. Cheers erupted. Sarah waited for them to quiet. We've restored power to 60% of the ship. Life support is stable. We've rebuilt the navigation systems from scratch. We've mapped the quantum drive and started modifications. Every day this ship gets a little less dead. She took a breath. But here's the truth. We're not trying to restore the Icarus 7. That ship failed. We're building something new, something better, a hybrid of Zathari precision and human determination. When we're done, this won't be their ship anymore. Sarah's voice rang out across the hangar. It'll be ours. And when we launch it, and we will launch it, the galaxy is going to learn something about Earth. They're going to learn that we take broken things and make them beautiful. That we turn failures into legends. She raised her fist. This is Prometheus rising, and it's going to fly. The roar of 12,000 voices shook the hangar. Inside the ship, Prometheus listened to the sound of humans refusing to quit. For the first time in years, something stirred in the AI's code. Something it hadn't felt since the day it launched.